The Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Bridges, Cook, Quorum, Crowder, Danielson, Donovan, Thunberg, Fields, Foote,
Excused.
Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Hill,
Excused.
Heisey, Holbert, Lee, Lundeen, Marble, Moreno, Pedersen,
Excused.
Priola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Story, Tate, Todd, Williams, 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 Winter, Woodward, Zenzinger, Mr. President.
Here. With 32 present, 0 absent, and 3 excused, we have a quorum. Senator Marble, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Colleagues and guests, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the Journal. Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the reading of the Journal for Monday, February 3rd, 2020 be dispensed with and the Journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Senator Rodriguez will also be fined $4 for referring to the President as the Chair. Yes. Senate Services.
Correctly engrossed Senate Bill 2643, 83, 86, 90, and 113. Correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 36 and 108.
Members, would you please join me in welcoming our colleague to the Senate floor, Senator Matt Jones. Committee reports.
February 3rd, 2020, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of committee following Senate Bill 42, be amended as follows as so amended, be referred to Committee on Appropriations with a favorable recommendation. February 3rd, 2020, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of committee following Senate Bill 61, be amended as follows as so amended, be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. February 3rd, 2020, Committee on Judiciary, after consideration of committee following Senate Bill 37, be referred to Committee of the Whole with a favorable recommendation. Recommendation be placed on the consent calendar.
Message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading and transmitted a riser statutes. House Bill 1020 and 1014, unanimous printed in the House Journal, February 3rd, 2020. The House has passed on third reading and transmitted a riser statutes. House Bill 1042.
Message from the Reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1042 without comment as amended House Bill 1014 and 1020.
Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 154 by Senator Donovan concerning requiring certain establishments that are licensed to alcohol beverages for on-premise consumption to allow a customer to bring one bottle of wine into the licensed premises for consumption on the premises.
Business, Labor, and Technology.
Senate Bill 155 by Senator Sonnenberg and Representative Pelton concerning the continued presumption of non-injury to water rights regarding the use of an exempt well for domestic purposes after the land on which the well is located has been divided into multiple parcels.
Agriculture and Natural Resources. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order to take up Senate Resolution 2 under consideration of resolutions.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege, and we'll take up Senate Resolution 02. Let me correct that motion. You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will proceed out of order. Ms. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Resolution 02.
Senate Resolution 2 by Senators Sonnenberg and Fields concerning the designation of February 4th as Missing Persons Day in Colorado.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Resolution 2 and ask that it be read as directed through selections.
Ms. Carpenter, please read Senate Resolution 02.
Senate Resolution 2 by Senators Sonnenberg and Fields concerning the designation of February 4 as Missing Persons Day in Colorado. Whereas, while too many families grieve and hope for their missing children, others are in search of their missing family members of all ages. And whereas, the awareness of citizens, media, and law enforcement, as well as their support, their efforts, and their search for missing persons must continue. And whereas, the public plays a critical role in the success of the Amber Alert program and other alert programs. They become the eyes and ears of law enforcement and can be on the lookout for the missing person. And whereas, the common misconception that a person must be absent for at least 24 hours before being legally classified as missing is dangerous. When there is evidence of violence or of an unusual absence, it is critical that an investigation begin promptly. And whereas, new advances in technology must be utilized and made available to locate the missing. And whereas, the state of Colorado is committed to the safety and well-being of its citizens, both children and adults. And whereas, the designation of Missing Persons Day in Colorado will firmly embed the importance of missing persons and their families and friends in our state calendar and will raise a level of awareness with other cities and states that have already designated a Missing Persons Day. And whereas the designation of Missing Persons Day in Colorado offers a platform to plan events that will connect families with resources to help identify and find their long-term missing loved ones. And whereas each year hundreds of thousands of families are faced with what President Ronald Reagan called the stark terror of a unique tragedy, a missing family member. And whereas on January 10th, 2020, the FBI reported 86,989 active missing persons in the United States, with a large portion being juveniles under the age of 21. And whereas children and adults go missing from their families for a number of devastating reasons, they run away or wander and become lost, they disappear under circumstances indicating that their disappearance may not have been voluntary, or they go missing under suspicious circumstances indicating that they may be in physical danger or the victims of foul play. And whereas in 2002, Colorado Governor Bill Owens signed House Bill 2-1083, establishing the AMBER, America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response Alert Program in Colorado. Named after 9-year-old Amber Hagerman, who was abducted and killed in Texas in 1996. The program ensures that local law enforcement agencies can use the emergency alert system in Colorado to broadcast information to alert citizens of missing children. And whereas since 1996, Amber Alerts have successfully recovered 977 children nationally, and 61 due to the wireless emergency alert. And whereas, for all the important work done to recover missing children, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children assisted law enforcement and families in 2019 with more than 29,000 cases of missing children nationwide, and the organization lists 155 active missing child cases in Colorado, with posters circulating on nearly 70 of those cases. Even though all disappeared from their families when they were children, some have been missing for decades. Whereas the designation of Missing Persons Day in Colorado will ensure that the families and friends of the missing know that they are not alone in this tragedy of uncertainties and lack of closure, which leads to extreme suffering and long-lasting effects on the health, finances, and relationships of those left behind. And whereas every missing person is someone's son or daughter, father or mother, brother or sister, partner or friend, and every missing person deserves to be searched for and found. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 72nd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, that we, the members of the Colorado Senate, recognize the epidemic of the missing in America as the silent mass disaster, and empathize with the ongoing suffering of the families and friends of those who are missing, that we recognize the importance of raising awareness of the number of people who go missing in Colorado each year, that we applaud the committed efforts of families, law enforcement agencies, and concerned citizens who work to locate missing persons, that we encourage the continued support of worthy initiatives and private and public programs to increase efforts to locate missing persons, that we hereby designate February 4th of each year as Missing Persons Day and support the goals and ideals of the day.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please be seated. Thank you. Members, we started this 4 years ago. 4 years ago, on the anniversary, the one-year anniversary, when Kelsey Schelling left. And then we looked, as we started this, we looked, and members, if you look, starting on page 4 of the resolution, there are 3.5 pages of missing people in Colorado. Missing people in Colorado, and yet there are $29,000 cases of missing children nationwide. We have 155 active missing child cases in Colorado. Oftentimes we forget. We see it, we hear it, we know there's an issue, and then we move on. The reason that we do this every year and now have a Missing Persons Day every February 4th of every year is so we don't forget. Members, you can see around the chamber here and some up in the gallery photos, posters, pictures of people that don't know where their family members are. Can you imagine exchanging text messages with your son or your daughter or your grandfather or grandmother, or getting off of a phone call? I love you, daughter. And then the next morning or an hour later, you send them a text message and there's no response. And an hour after that, you send another text message and there's still no response. So you call and there's no response. And little do you realize that that last phone call you had a couple, 3 hours earlier would be the last time you talked to that person. let alone thinking back to the last time you actually saw that person, because now you don't get to see them again. You don't know where they went for whatever reason. Members, that's why we bring this every year, to remember. To make sure that we never stop that diligent effort to find those that are still missing. For families that are here today, there is nothing worse. The gnawing in the gut, the sleepless nights, you're consumed because you don't know where your loved one is. That's why we do this. That's why we take time out of our busy schedule to recognize how important those that are missing are to us and their families, and that we will pledge to continue to work to try and find each and every single one of those people that are missing.
Senator Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. First, I want to thank the good senator from Sterling, Colorado, for running this resolution year after year after year. It's an honor to serve with you, and it's an honor that you take time out, you carve out time for us to focus on people that are missing. You already shared the statistics. I think you said 29,000 cases of people missing. So I want to just thank you for your labor as it relates to dealing with people who have to be confronted with circumstances that they had no control over. Thank you, Senator, for being concerned about those who've been harmed by crime. Thank you, Senator, for your compassion for families that are here today. As you look at the folks around our benches, you see photos. Photos. And when I look at those photos, I see beauty. I see smiles. I see someone that was very, very important to you, and now they're missing. It's hard to have someone in your family that one day they're laughing, they're joking, you're fixing them dinner, you're having a good time, and the next day they are gone. When you have a person that's missing from your life, it's not like missing and looking for your keys, because your keys can be replaced. You can call a dealership or a locksmith and they can replace your keys. But when you have a loved one that is missing and you don't know where they are, then your heart constantly searches for that person. You're always looking for it. It's automatic. So don't be shameful. Don't feel guilty. When someone you love is missing, it's on automatic that you're always going to be looking for that person. You might be pumping gas. You could be shopping. You could be at the theater. But automatically, I would be looking for that person. Where are you? You might see someone that looks familiar, and you might want to rush to see if that's your missing loved one. It's hard to live a life when you know someone is missing and you don't know why. You're living with unanswered questions that have to be difficult. Because when you don't know the answer, you might try to fill in the blanks. But I can tell you that this body of senators are concerned about missing people. And we have certain agencies that are designed to follow leads and to help track down any tips that they might have regarding that missing person. So I'm just here to kind of lend my voice to remind you to never lose hope. Never lose hope, because when you lose hope, then you can find yourself slipped into despair. Stay active with law enforcement as it relates to the merit of your case and that missing person. Don't lose hope. Your situation, as it relates to that person that's missing from your life, it might look like it's impossible. People may tell you to get over it. People might tell you to press the fast forward button and to move on. But I'm telling you, never give up on your heart and your position and your permission to allow yourself to understand the circumstances that you're confronted with. Part of the love that you have for the loved one that is missing, it's so natural. So never give up hope and allow our government and the people who are responsible to keep that case alive. I know I've seen situations on TV where a family member is united with a loved one. It is possible. And I don't know the merits of all the situations behind the person that you love that's missing today. I'm just here to say that we care about you, we're hopeful for you, and we're here for you. God bless you.
Senator Quorum. So, guests, please remember that there's no applause or clapping or any gestures in the Senate. Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to thank the senator from Sterling for his passion on this issue. I wear this yellow ribbon over my heart because I want those of you who are going through this, the loss of one of your loved ones, to know that my heart is with you and my heart breaks for you. I have friends on this list. Matter of fact, one of my friends has been missing, I think, since 1969. I was actually telling stories about that person last week because there is no final date on this. We know that he is not alive. Frankly, his personality was so large, the world would not be large enough for him to hide in. But his family needs that closure. They need to know. And so I think it's up to us, and I do not know who is going to pick up the torch as we are term limited in this, but this needs to be something that we continue each and every year. And members, let's not think about it on February the 4th. Let's think about each and every day that we serve the people of Colorado. Watching the news this morning, a young man from Colorado Springs been missing for a week. please, please keep these people in your heart. If you see something that you think is unusual, report it. Don't say somebody else is going to do it. And the senator is so correct that we need to respond immediately. And I often say this in this chamber, we are far too often reactive rather than proactive. And let's take charge of this and help these families find their loved ones.
Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, and I'm glad the good senator from Montrose brought up the ribbon. Each of you have one on your desk today. I would ask you to wear it with pride as we remember the entire day on why February 4th is Missing Persons Day. And then put it on your desk. So March 4th or March 10th, you remember the yellow ribbon on why we were here February 4th, and we continue to remember missing people, not only in Colorado, but throughout the country and the world. Let me conclude by saying thank you to Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, for allowing us to carve out time of our busy schedule to be able to do this today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the ability to honor these families and the legacy of the people that are missing. And so with that, Mr. President, I ask for a roll call vote and the chimes be rung as we cast our vote.
The motion before the body is the adoption of Resolution SR 002. A roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Carpenter, please poll the senators.
Senators Bridges. Bridges, aye. Cook. Cook, aye. Quorum. Quorum, aye. Crowder. Crowder, aye. Danielson. Danielson, aye. Donovan. Donovan, aye. Finberg. Finberg, aye. Fields.
Aye.
Fields, aye. Foote is excused. Gardner. Gardner, aye. Janal. Janal, aye. Gonzalez. Gonzalez, aye. Hanson. Hanson, aye. Hill is excused. Heisey. Heisey, aye. Holbert. Holbert, aye. Lee. Lee, aye. Lundeen. Lundeen, aye. Marble. Marble, aye. Moreno. Moreno, aye. Pedersen is excused. Priola. Priola, aye. Rankin. Rankin, aye. Rodriguez. Rodriguez, aye. Scott. Scott, aye. Smallwood. Smallwood, aye. Sonnenberg.
Aye.
Sonnenberg, aye. Story. Story, aye. Tate. Tate, aye. Todd. Todd, aye. Williams. Williams, aye. Winter. Winter, aye. Woodward. Woodward, aye. Zenzinger. Zenzinger, aye. Mr. President.
Aye.
Mr. President, aye.
With 32 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, SR 02 is passed. The Senate chimes will be rung prior to co-sponsors. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Having no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on SR 002. The Senate will stand in a brief recess to welcome our guests. Third reading of bills, final passage, consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to the bills listed on the consent calendar?
Senate Bill 113 by Senator Tate and Representative Valdez D. concerning the mandatory contents of each license issued to a health facility by the Department of Public Health and Environment. Senate Bill 43 by Senator Tate and Representative Valdez D. concerning a correction of the rate of reimbursement that out-of-network healthcare providers entitled to receive from a health insurance carrier for services provided to a covered person at an in-network facility when the healthcare provider submits a claim to the carrier within the specified time period to conform with existing law. Senate Bill 90 by Senator Winter and Representative Esgar-Antitone concerning donations of food to nonprofit organizations for distribution to needy individuals. Senate Bill 86 by Senator Williams and Holbert and Representative Snyder concerning requirements associated with the expiration of legal authority to sell alcohol beverages in connection with authorizing the executive director of the Department of Revenue to notify alcohol beverage licensees of an expiring license by any reasonable means as determined by rule and to establish a fee for renewal applications for license or permitted renewals for alcohol beverages and permitted malt beverages.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of all the bills in the third reading of bills consent calendar, which includes Senate Bill 113, Senate Bill 43, Senate Bill 90, and Senate Bill 86.
Mr. Carpenter, please excuse Senator Rankin. Is there any discussion on any of the bills listed? Senator Crowder.
Mr. President, I'd like to be a recorded no vote on 43.
Senator Crowder will be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 043. Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the passage of all the bills on the third reading and final bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes on any of the bills? With a vote of 31 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 4 excused, Senate Bill 113 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Crowder. With a vote of 30 ayes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 4 excused, Senate Bill 043 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Gardner. With a vote of 31 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 4 excused, Senate Bill 090 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Sonnenberg, Heisey, Moreno, Danielson, Hansen, Cook, Corum, Lee, Gardner, Story, Lundin, Rodriguez, Zenzinger, Janal, Todd, Priola, Smallwood, Woodward, Bridges, Williams, Marble, Donovan, Scott, Tate. Please add the president. With a vote of 31 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Senate Bill 086 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Moreno, Smallwood, Tate, third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 038.
Senate Bill 38 by Senator Finberg and Representative Hawkins, Lewis, and Young concerning the establishment of a statewide standard for the sale of biodiesel blended diesel fuel in Colorado.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 38 on third reading and final passage, and unfortunately ask for permission to run a third reading amendment.
Mr. Majority Leader, will you please explain the need for a third reading amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. The need for a third reading amendment is that we needed to clarify the definition of renewable diesel.
The question before the body is to grant permission to the Majority Leader for his request to offer a third reading amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Permission is granted. Will the clerk please read Amendment L014?
Amendment L014 to Senate Bill 38 by Senator Finberg, amend Gross Bill page 2, line 21, strike subsection 1.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move L014.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this, as I said, does something quite simple. We defined renewable diesel in the bill that we passed on seconds by referring to a section of federal code. People felt they would be more comfortable if we actually defined it rather than referring to a section of federal code. We also add one other tiny little thing, which is allowing for a waiver process for the requirement that refineries sell clear diesel. It is not it's permissive in the first place, but folks wanted there to be an extra layer of comfort of knowing that if it was required, there would be a waiver process in place for them.
Is there any discussion regarding Amendment L014? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment L014 to Senate Bill 038. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 31 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Amendment L014 is adopted. Mr. Majority Leader, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I think we've talked quite a bit about this, but I will just say this is a small step. This is dealing with the air quality problems that we have in Colorado that I think we are all familiar with. And it really is a pretty narrow bill. It only deals with the offering of diesel fuel in the non-attainment area where there is an air quality problem. And it is only a B5 requirement for biodiesel. At first, it ratchets up to B10, but there are plenty of protections in place to ensure that if there is a supply problem, if it increases prices, if there are other issues that come into play, that there are plenty of opportunities for people to get an exemption or a waiver. Again, this also is only applies to the months when we are in the kind of ozone season, so June to September. So it's a fairly narrow bill, and if there are any problems down the road, there are plenty of protections in place for folks to get waivers and exemptions. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Sonberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. Although I appreciate what the Majority Leader is trying to accomplish, let me give you the reality as someone who actually runs trucks on what this means. I'm going to share with you some information from the Detroit Engine biodiesel policy, and basically Cummins, Caterpillar all have the same type of policy. Biodiesel blends up to 5% are compatible provided they meet the specifications listed in this document. And it should be noted that the specifications in this document are the ones that are actually in the bill. 5%. Remember, the bill takes it to 10% in 23. Series 60 engines are the only engines developed by Detroit which are compatible, except engines prior to manufacture in 2004. And it says, engines manufactured prior to 2004 are not recommended to run biodiesel. Now understand that when you have trucks, you don't get a new engine all the time. When you have an engine that needs overhauled, 100,000 miles, million miles, maybe 500,000, 750,000 miles. You redo the engine you have, you overhaul the engine you have, and then you do it again. So this 2004 engine, if you have a truck that's older than 2004, and understand that every truck in my fleet is older than that. So mine would not qualify to run on biodiesel. Here's what else it says. Detroit Diesel does not warrant damage caused by the use of unapproved fuels. Unapproved fuels would be those at 10% in 23. Those would be any fuel with biodiesel if my engine is older than 2004. Granted, I don't have a warranty on my engine over 2004. But here's what it tells me to do if my engine is older than 2004. Oh, I'm sorry, this is what it says to do if your engine is newer than 2004 and you run biodiesel. Replace fuel filters twice as often as the service interval in the published guide. Also note that biodiesel blends are less stable than diesel fuel and should not be stored for more than 1 month. That means on my farm, and where we keep our trucks, when I buy a semi-load of fuel that lasts 2 months or 3 months, depending on the year, 6,000 gallon, 7,000 gallon, I no longer can keep that in the tank. Otherwise, it starts growing things. And when I say growing things, it's kind of like moss in a tank. And that creates a bigger issue for us in our fuel systems and our fuel filters. Let me also tell you what it says. Before parking an engine for an extended time period, and it doesn't say what extended time period means. Is that a week? Is that a few days? The fuel system must be purged of all biodiesel blends and flushed with petroleum diesel fuel. So in other words, if I park my truck, if I go on vacation, or if I had transmission go out and I have to do work on a transmission, it may take a week, 10 days. What that means is I have to purge my fuel system in order to preserve my engine and the components of my engine while they do the work. Biodiesel blends will also reduce the performance of diesel oxidation catalysts and may result in the use of more particulate filter regeneration. That's basically what I just talked to you about. Grows things, creates new things within the fuel that creates more particles that have to be filtered out. Now let me tell you about cold water performance. Well, obviously this bill deals June 1st to, I believe, September 15th. So you're not supposed to have cold water. But we've had snow in June. We've had snow in September, first part of September. Does that mean the cold water will not affect, or the cold weather will not affect this fuel? I can tell you from experience that biofuels gel quicker, much quicker than petroleum diesel. Here's what else, and part of the reason you'll understand why it gels. Water contamination in biofuels is more difficult to separate from biodiesel as compared to diesel fuel. This significantly reduces the water separator efficiency. So in other words, you have water in the fuel itself. Excessive water contamination may lead to corrosion in fuel system and promote microbe growth. Again, the same thing we talked about earlier. And I'm reading this from the Detroit Diesel Biofuel Policy. Fuel injection system failure due to corrosion caused by the use of biodiesel fuel blends will not be covered by Detroit Diesel warranty. Here's what it tells you that you need to do oil analysts more often. Biodiesel may accelerate acid formation in the engine oil, contributing to the deterioration of your parts, rings, those type of things. Biodiesel fuel dilution is very harmful to the engine oil and will not evaporate from the engine oil as easily as diesel fuel. Biodiesel fuel dilution will reduce the oil viscosity and accelerate oil degradation, requiring reduced oil drain intervals. All in all, here's what it says for the warranty implications. Detroit Diesel is not responsible for the cost of maintenance or repairs due to the lack of performance of a required maintenance service or the failure to use fuel, oil, lubricants, and coolants meeting Detroit Diesel recommended specifications. Using biodiesel blends does not automatically void Detroit Diesel's warranty. However, any failure of the engine or the after-treatment device that is determined to be caused by biodiesel fuels will not be covered by Detroit Diesel warranty. Understand that most of our engine companies, manufacturer companies, have the same type policy. They want to move to biodiesel. They want you to be able to use biodiesel. They're prepared to do that at 5%. Some of our tractors are actually going to the 20% level, but still have these same messages in them that you have to service more often. You're going to have water in the fuel, so if you park your tractor for 3 weeks, there may be corrosion, there may be damage. You have to be prepared to deal with that and purge that system so it's not there if you park your tractor. Here's what I'm telling you now is going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I know this is a small step, and this is in the unattainment areas of Colorado. I believe there's 7 counties. People are going to buy their fuel every place other than those 7 counties.
Would the good senator from Sterling like to be extended to his next 10 minutes?
Thank you, Mr. President. I indeed would.
Proceed.
Thank you. So as trucks come into Colorado, they will know the rules, they will know the law, and they will buy their fuel somewhere else. We've seen how this works before when we change things in Colorado. I remember the days, gosh, was it 40 years ago when we changed the fuel tax in Colorado on diesel trucks, or the road tax on diesel trucks before we had IFTA and those type of things. And all of a sudden, and maybe for my friends on the West Slope, this may be an opportunity for them. Those trucks went to I-80 through Wyoming and Nebraska and down through New Mexico and Arizona rather than going through Colorado. Maybe that eliminates some of that I-70 traffic that we worry about. We have seen what happens when we make policy changes here that change the behavior of businesses in Colorado. I will tell you, I know for a fact that a trucking company that has the option to buy biodiesel and petroleum diesel will buy the petroleum diesel because they know they don't have these issues with their engine. They know they get better performance. And the question you have to ask yourself, if biodiesel is such a great product for us to use, and manufacturers and blenders get $1 a gallon rebate for blending fuels, why is it that still nobody utilizes this if there's a $1 discount? Why is that? I would argue with you that the risk of damage to my engines is too great for me to make that purchase. There are other trucking companies that will make the same decisions. And as we spread this to the entire state of Colorado, you know what's going to happen. I'll start buying my fuel. Trucking companies will start buying their fuel from Cheyenne, from North Platte. They have refineries there. Much of the fuel comes into Colorado, comes from there to begin with. We don't want to drive these people out of Colorado. I would ask for your no vote on this bill and thank the majority leader for the work he is doing to try to make a better environment. This just isn't the answer for us and our businesses. Thank you.
Senator Corn.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the bill sponsor for bringing this conversation forward. Because, you know, this is an education for us. I often refer to the General Assembly as 100 amateurs making professional decisions. Because we have so much that we cannot be an expert on every issue. And I certainly fell into that on multiple occasions. But on this issue, I am a little bit of an expert. You all know what a Class 8 truck is? A couple of heads shake. That's the big truck that the good Senator from Sterling was talking about. It provides our goods and services. I happen to live in an area that everything we buy, everything we sell, rides on a truck. And I've been through this before. I remember back in the 80s. That probably shocks some of you that I can remember back that far, but I remember back in the 80s where it was kind of a fad, I think. These guys were buying these little kits to make their own biodiesel. And they were going to all the restaurants and getting their vegetable oil to convert that to biodiesel. And it was probably responsible for me to gaining about 50 pounds because every time I got behind one of these vehicles that was driving down the road, I could smell that, and I ended up at McDonald's. That's a somewhat true story. That's one of them 96% of the facts I told about the other day. But anyway, the fad is over because, frankly, it was hard on that diesel engine itself. And so today we're dealing with the same situation. We're trying to create a solution for a problem that we all admit that we have, and that's air quality. But, you know, we could all do more ourselves. You know, we have public transportation, we have light rail, we have everything you can imagine. Yet, I look around in the parking lots, no matter where I'm at, in Denver or around the state, the parking lots are all full. So we're asking someone to pay a price that will have a pinhead's worth of difference in our air quality. It's not going to make a lot of difference. And I'll tell you why. The good Senator from Sterling pointed out a lot of the reasonings, and I will not repeat into that because he did a magnificent job. Magnificent. That's a hard word to say on a late morning here. But frankly, it's not efficient for us to use this fuel. Why is it not efficient? Because it also results in less power and reduced fuel mileage. So what is the gain? We're talking about stuff coming in on trucks. We do not produce this biodiesel in Colorado. So it has to come in. But it will contaminate the pipeline. So you can't use it on the pipeline to bring it in. So how is it going to get here? It is going to come on either rail or truck, when in essence will actually do more harm to our air quality if those are truly the source of our problem, because we're putting more of those diesel engines on the road to bring it into us. So I had a friend last night call me. I don't know. He runs over 70 trucks, and he won't be affected by this. He's down in Lamar, Colorado. He won't be affected because, frankly, he's not going to buy any fuel in this area. But he said, just let your good senators know we are concerned with air quality everywhere, and we tried biodiesel. Frankly, it didn't work. So with that, I'm going to ask that you give a no vote. Ensure the good senator that our admiration and love for him is still there, but a no vote is not personal. Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. I'm going to kind of come at this from a little bit different angle. As we sat in committee and heard the bill, started thinking about unintended consequences. And this bill is one of those bills that we don't know a whole lot of the consequences, and we're concerned about that. As I said in my closing remarks in committee, maybe this should have been something that went to a task force, and maybe people should have had more input because there's a lot of concerns. As I sat in committee, I was actually texting an unknown source at CDOT asking them why they weren't testifying, and they were told they were not allowed to. That concerned me right there, but I get it. I understand why. Because they have a lot of these engines that have been laid out, and I'm not going to go into all those details because we've heard the data, that have some issues. Now, why do they have issues? It's actually pretty simple. And some of you have served on city councils and county commissioners and understand this, and some construction companies, quite frankly. One of the problems that those people have is that you have a piece of equipment that doesn't get used that much. So I've been to auctions and bought track hose and other things, and we'll find one that's 15 years old with 250 hours on it. And that's a steal. I mean, that's a great gig. But what it means is they don't use them like a construction company does. They're not out there running these machines 8 hours a day because they don't have to. It's not a profit center for them. They have snow plows. They have lawnmowers, backhoes, hundreds of pieces of equipment that under this situation are going to be problematic. Now, we already know CDOT is strapped for funding. So we don't know those numbers. We can't get another fiscal note. I hope our friends in the House are able to maybe pump the brakes on this and get some more fiscal data. Because I really do have a fear that not only CDOT will be spending millions and millions of dollars on new equipment, but so will the counties, the cities, school districts, and a whole lot of other folks that will be affected and impacted by this bill immediately will have to make some massive investments. To the good senator's point from Sterling, even the counties and the cities, they don't just take a piece of equipment and they don't go down to the Caterpillar dealer and trade them in, they rebuild the motors. Same situation as a farmer or a trucker, because these things are pricey. New road grader, machine controls, $1 million. $1 million for one road grader. $750,000 for a milling machine. I know that from personal experience. We just got one sitting out here at Wagner right now waiting for us. These are pricey pieces of equipment, and they have to run every day in a contracting world, but in a city, county, state world, they do not. Very low hours, but the equipment tends to be much older. Other problems that we're going to see, potentially, on top of Vail Pass, there's a whole lot of equipment sitting up there that sits there year-round. Today, tomorrow, it's pretty chilly up there. They got to go grab the backhoe because they have something they have to get done. They have to move something. Well, somebody forgot to drain the tanks and flush the system so they could put biodiesel in that system to make it operate. Maybe the unit was sitting here in Denver where this mandate will take the biggest effect, but then they've shipped it up to Vail Pass. Or they've shipped it to Loveland, Wolf Creek. There's 100 different places it could go. And trust me when I tell you, they move their equipment constantly. They have a lot of snow plows that are much older than you believe they are because they look really good, again, because they're very, very low hours. But they're older equipment. I would love to see somebody somehow get us some fiscal data on what those impacts could be, and I implore the sponsor of the bill to maybe talk to his House members, or he could do it right now. He could do a third reading amendment because I can't get away with it. To move this to a task force or a study, and let's really take a hard look at what the fiscal impacts are going to be to not just the farmers and the ranchers and the local truckers, but all these municipalities, all these counties, and the state of Colorado. Parks and Wildlife is another one. They have some of their own equipment. We don't know what the results could be. And it's not that somebody hates biodiesel or renewable diesel. We understand those things are all coming in the future. And yes, it's here in Colorado now, and it's going to continue to grow. And that's great. But let's just make sure we know we have the facts. With that, I ask for a no vote and a third reading amendment. That was just a joke. Thank you.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam President Pro Tem. Colleagues, I want to first address the point made by the good senator from Grand Junction and Mesa County around the idea of a task force. I'd like to remind everyone in the body that actually this bill did go through a task force. We had an interim committee. In fact, the good senator from Mesa County was on the interim committee, and the bill was first proposed at our Grand Junction meeting in September. So we've had a lot of time to discuss this. I think the majority leader has done a great job addressing some of the operational concerns that we've heard a little bit more about here on third reading. But rest assured, we've been working on this bill for many months, and the interim committee process is for that express purpose. In fact, we had bipartisan support to bring this bill forward out of the interim committee, as we did with all of our bills on the Energy Interim Committee. I also want to focus us back on the point of this bill, which is to reduce air pollution in my district and in all the metro districts that are suffering from day after day of non-compliance. My kids, my neighbors in Denver suffering from high levels of air pollution, and this bill is designed, among many other possibilities that we have to address that problem, but designed to start to reduce that brown cloud issue that continues to plague us here in the Front Range. So I thank the majority leader for taking on the operational issues. We've just heard about snow plows. This bill applies in the summer months. The summer months. And the last thing I'll leave you with is it's correct to say we don't make these products in Colorado right now, but what a great opportunity for the future when we know there's a clear market. And for our friends that produce soybeans, this is a terrific opportunity, particularly in the context of low prices caused by irresponsible tariffs. So let's give the soybean farmers a chance. Let's have a clear market for them to produce these products. This is a win for not only the air quality in the urban areas, but it's a great win for the rural producers as well. Please support this bill.
Senator Marble.
Thank you, Madam President. I have kind of a hard time. I just heard soybeans, and we aren't a soybean state. So how is this going to affect Colorado in a positive manner? I think you have to know your egg before you start throwing out what we're trying to do to help our farmers. Soybeans aren't grown here. That's not one of our main crops at all. This bill definitely puts the cart before the horse, and I have no problem at all trying to solve our emissions and smog program within the state and within our world. But I do have a problem with mandating biofuels to engines that aren't capable of efficiently handling and using that biofuel. And I have a huge concern, and this is when you look at the storage timeline for biofuel, where will refineries dump this biofuel when it's reached its storage life? Where does it go from there? There's a lot of questions regarding mandating this biofuel for the state of Colorado. And these are questions that aren't answered. But what's really funny to me is when we look at biofuel, it takes more biofuel to go the same amount of distance as in regular diesel. So with more fuel being burned, it equals more emissions. And it also creates incredible wear and tear on a diesel pickup that is not able to run efficiently on this. So this is the cart before the horse. Why don't we begin to focus on getting engines to efficiently run on the biodiesel instead of penalizing people who already own diesel trucks, and they are going to be just economically taken to the limit on trying to maintain this truck that cost thousands upon thousands of dollars, whether it be a diesel 150 or a semi on the road. Every truck owner is going to suffer for this. And the questions are one after another, but mine too in huge. Where are we going to tell the refineries to dump this fuel once it has reached its storage life? I'd like that answer. Thank you.
Senator Corm.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the opportunity to educate. And we're going to educate on two issues here, Madam President. Are you all listening? Yes. Thank you. When Madam President is standing there behind me, she is not Madam President Pro Tem. She is Madam President. So, this is education, and I think education is very good, as long as it doesn't interfere with thinking. And sometimes we do that. And we talk about an opportunity for Colorado farmers. Members, the opportunity to grow soybeans will be very difficult, because Mother Nature does not provide us with the number of days required for soybeans to mature at optimum quality. So, just a matter of education, and ask you to think about it.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. So, colleagues, I actually am rising hoping to change some votes. We start out in agreement. We don't like the brown cloud, none of us do. We want to do something about it. The question is, does this bill actually achieve that? I think it's conclusively provable it does not. I always tell my constituents in my town halls the most effective voice that I can ever hear from is not a lobbyist, it's not an expert on subject, it's the people I represent when they bring their story of their life to me so I can bring it back to this chamber. Now, we had an unusual opportunity today to hear from a constituent, somebody who truly understands this issue, lives it day in and day out, happens to be a member of the body, senator from Sterling, told us his story. I'm not certain exactly how many trucks he runs. I assume it's about 10 or so. The reality is, across the state of Colorado today, according to Colorado Motor Carriers Association, there are 13,180 operators either larger or smaller, but are confronted with the exact same issues that the senator told us about. Pretty big swath of economic impact across our state. But you know what? If the bill gets at what we're trying to get at, we ought to do it. However, this bill is not going to get at what it's trying to get at. You know how far it is to North Platte? You know how far it is to Cheyenne? You know how easy it is to walk around this bill? Consider it done. The reality is, when you put your trucking operation at risk because the coercive power of government says, we got a better idea than you, you are not being responsible to yourself, your family, or the capital you're deploying in an effort to create jobs and provide opportunities for the people whom you employ. You're putting all of that at risk. And to what end? Well, to ruin your equipment, tear down your operation. But the opportunity to walk around that, which cannot be controlled by the state of Colorado, exists inherent in this bill. Drive to North Platte. Have the fuel you needed loaded and bring it back, and actually run fuel that you know is not going to ruin your engines. Now, you hear me from this well constantly say, let's not by government fiat demand that people do something they will not do. Instead, let's find solutions that pull people into the better objectives we're trying to achieve. Back to the starting point of this conversation. Let's get rid of the brown cloud. We're all on board with that. This bill will not do it. Let's find a way to pull people into the solution. We've already got that in the system now. A $1 tax credit per gallon to try and get at what this bill is now through the coercive power of government saying, thou shalt do, which no one will do. Let's figure out a way to pull people into the conversation. Because then, instead of getting the fuel from North Platte or Cheyenne or somewhere else that walks around what this bill tries to enforce in a way that it cannot, people might say, you know what? I can do that. I can contribute to that. I want to be part of the solution. So, as well-intended as this bill is, at achieving a goal we all agree about, it will not do it. So I say, let's back up. Let's not put at risk the core of the livelihood of 13,180 operators who help put food on our table, clothes in our closet, roofs over our houses. Let's approach this a different way, a sustainable way, by pulling people into the conversation instead of demanding and coercing people to do something they're not going to do anyway. Let's think about how we actually solve problems. I believe there's 35 problem solvers in this room, except me on a bad day. I think we all can contribute to the conversation in a way better than this bill does it. Quite frankly, it's a hallmark of what we ought to be doing and thinking about with everything we do in here. How can we pull people into the conversation? How can we incent people to do things that call them to their better angels, instead of forcing people to do something that, under this bill, they're not going to do anyway? I oppose this bill and ask my colleagues to think clearly, be intellectually honest with yourself. Do you want to solve the problem or not? Consider that before you make your vote. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, as someone who has changed his position on this bill, I thought I would come and explain a little bit why I'm a no vote. We have friends here in the chamber, many outside the chamber, constituents who are advocates for electric vehicles. And I've said somewhat jokingly, but I guess seriously, I hope to be the very last person to ever have an electric vehicle. I don't want one of those. But I love diesel. I'm not an expert. I am not in the trucking industry. I'm not in the ag industry. But as a consumer, I really like diesel. The torque, the mileage, I just prefer it. But there's so few options for we consumers. You can go up to a large pickup truck, and those are now pushing $100,000. Yeah. And I just can't justify that as a commuter. I mean, my drive here is 18.3 miles one way, and I just don't need that. Currently, I'm driving a Toyota pickup truck, and our friends at Toyota, boy, if you would give us a diesel option in a light-duty pickup truck or SUV, put that in a Tacoma, I'm all over that. Or the new Jeep Gladiator. Wow, man, if I could get one of those with a diesel, I'd be in one of those just like that. So when I first saw and heard about Senate Bill 38 and biodiesel and renewable diesel, and thank you to friends from the petroleum industry who came and explained the difference, I really like the idea. If I could buy a vehicle with a diesel engine and the manufacturer said, yes, you can use biodiesel or renewable diesel, that's something that's very appealing to me. I would do that. And if that would help clear the brown cloud, I remember what that was like in the 70s and 80s, and it seems a whole lot better today. But if I could help by buying something that I really wanted to and using fuel that I was told could help, I would do that. But I've changed my position, and primarily because my friend from Sterling, who is in the trucking industry, has explained to me why this would be so devastating to truckers. And my friend from Montrose, pointing out that so much of what we buy or even sell here in our state, at some point, has to be on a truck. Wait a minute. That's not my perspective as a consumer. Yeah, I would love to buy a diesel-powered vehicle that could burn these fuels. I would love to be able to support that, but not at the cost of trucking, not at the cost of ag. So all of a sudden, here I am. If this was about electric vehicles, I have no problem being a no vote. I don't like those. I mean, speaking as a consumer. But diesel, I'd really like to see this happen. So when I first saw the majority leader's bill, I thought, well, I'm probably going to be yes vote. But today, understanding, again, the pure information, the facts that the senator from Sterling brought to us, I can't vote yes. I remember, was it 10, 11 years ago when a tax exemption was eliminated on certain agricultural products, and people in the ag industry said, well, wait a minute. I live right next door to Kansas or Nebraska or Wyoming or New Mexico or Utah. And if you get rid of this and the retailers here, the providers here in Colorado are charging a new tax and I can go across the state line and buy it, I might be inclined to do that. If they're spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, they might be inclined to cross that state line. And then people pointed out, well, yeah, you'd still owe the use tax. Well, yeah. But are we here to help business folks in North Platte or Cheyenne or maybe even Raton? I don't know. No, our job is to look out for the people of Colorado. And this is something I really wanted to support, but after hearing the input from our colleagues in trucking and ag, I realized this probably isn't the right time, the right solution, and I'll be voting no. But I do want to thank the majority leader for bringing the bill. Thank you for the education of the good senator from Sterling and Montrose, Grand Junction. Those of you who know more about how this is going to affect the commercial space, thank you for that perspective, because I don't know those things, and I did learn some things, and I'll be a no vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Fenberg. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, I appreciate the discussion this morning on this bill, and I'll make this relatively brief, but I want to say a few things. I do think it's always a little odd when you have twice as long of a debate during third reading as you do on second reading. And so if there had been concerns that I felt like could be addressed, I think we actually addressed most of them. And that's by working with the stakeholders that will be impacted or have a reason to be interested in this bill. I know we're probably ready to be done with this bill, but it hasn't been that long that we've been debating it, but we're all ready to move on. But I've actually spent the last 6 months working on this bill because, as the senator from Denver mentioned, this actually went through a task force. This was through an interim committee. We heard from stakeholders, and we drafted a bill with bipartisan support. And then, of course, as things happen often when it enters this building and January comes around, people start going to their corners, and you hear different arguments. And I get that, and I respect that, and I know that is part of the process. But I do want to make sure people understand that this wasn't just some harebrained idea. This was worked on, and this has been amended pretty heavily to address all of the legitimate concerns that came about. The Rocky Mountain Farmers Union has endorsed this bill because of the potential for the economic development opportunities it could have for farmers in Colorado. I met with multiple truckers. I met with the Petroleum Association. I met with many of the refineries and the different retail gas stations. Some are supportive, some are neutral, some are mildly opposed, but not aggressively opposed, probably, considering the amendments that were put in here. If the hysteria that we've heard this morning about this bill is going to happen, I would think that they would just say, vote no. This is a bad bill, this is bad for Colorado, but several of them support it. So several of them said, thanks for taking our amendments, we're neutral. To me, that means some of this hysteria might be unfounded. If the actual professionals and the individuals who will be implementing this and do this as their line of work say it's doable and it's not going to have a dramatic impact, and they actually find benefit to this bill passing because there's money to be made on this product. If this is something that would actually put 13,000 or so people out of business or dramatically impact their livelihood, I wouldn't be carrying this bill, and I don't think any of these organizations would have worked in good faith to get this bill to where it is today. I know there are some comments about, many of us just don't understand because we don't work in this area or we don't drive a truck. I've driven diesels for about 20 years. I actually used to make biodiesel. It's weird, and it makes you hungry for some French fries when you do it. But I did it as a hobby, and I learned a lot about it. And I'm not going to say I'm an expert. I'm not going to say I'm a professional in this area, but I do know quite a bit. And a lot of what we are discussing, a lot of what has come up today about this bill, I would say a lot of it is true. A lot of it, they are facts, but not for B5 or B10 that references the percentage of the fuel that is made up of biodiesel. They are facts for B100, for B90, for B80, for high levels of biodiesel. A lot of the information about warranties and about engine compatibility, that is if you are running pure biodiesel or a very high percentage. It is not relevant if you are running B5 or B10. Manufacturers, all major manufacturers, honor warranties up to B20. In fact, some states have a very similar law, but they require it to be B20, and our law only goes up to B10, this bill. I'm guessing those other states also have trucks. They also have farmers. They also move things around the states. And they're doing fine, and they don't have major warranty issues as far as I know. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick before I let us go to a vote is that this bill applies to two types of fuel. It says these percentage requirements have to happen, but you can meet it through biodiesel, which we're mostly talking about today, or you can meet it through renewable diesel, which is a totally different product. Almost every issue that we have heard about, again, only applies to high levels of biodiesel, but none of those issues apply to renewable diesel. So if a refinery or a business was super concerned about the potential biodiesel comments that we heard today, they would probably just do renewable diesel, and you'd be in compliance, and you would have none of these problems potentially happening to you or to your engines. The other thing I would say is if I am wrong on any of this, it's okay, because the bill has an exemption and a waiver process that the Oil and Public Safety Division would put in place if there were major problems. This bill intentionally ratchets up. The requirement is just B5 at first. And in order to go to that B10 level, OPS and other relevant agencies have to actually do a study to make sure we are ready to do it. Those are the same people in charge of the exemptions and waivers. So if their study shows that we're not ready, they'll probably just have a conversation with themselves in the mirror and say, let's implement the waiver and implement this bill once we are ready. So I do not think that there are major concerns. I understand that a lot of people in this chamber probably just are uneasy about a mandate. Totally get it. That is a legitimate debate that I think reasonable people can have. But I do think a lot of the concerns around the engine compatibility, the putting people out of business, I do think that is relatively unfounded. And again, if I'm totally wrong, it's okay, because there is an exemption and a waiver process for everything that is required in this bill. So, Madam President, I'll close there. I do hope that, as some folks have said, this is not how we are going to solve our air quality problems. But we need to try just about everything. We need to try many things. This is not going to get rid of the brown cloud overnight. But this does get us towards starting to put very easy implementable things in place to start addressing that problem from one angle. It's not the only angle, but it is one of the angles, and it's an important one. And I think it's doable. Other states have done it, and I think we will see many other states, including Missouri, which is debating a very similar bill at this moment, adopting these types of policies. With that, I'll close. Madam President, thank you. Members, I ask for an aye vote.
Please add Senator Foote to the roll. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 38. Are there any no votes? Minority Leader Holbert? Senator Cook? Senator Smallwood? Senator Tate? Senator Scott? Senator Gardner? Senator Woodward? Senator Lundin? Senator Quorum? Senator Marble? Senator Crowder? Senator Heisey? Senator Sonnenberg? With a vote of 13 noes and 19 ayes, with a vote of 19 ayes and 13 noes, and 3 excused, Senate Bill 38 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Lee, Senator Moreno, Senator Gonzalez, Senator Bridges, Senator Hansen,
Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 083.
Senate Bill 83 by Senator Gonzalez and Representative Herod concerning prohibiting civil arrest while on courthouse grounds.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 83 on third reading of bills, final passage, and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief, even brief for all of you and not just simply me. This bill came before us in judiciary, and it raises an important legal issue of whether or not someone who has a so-called civil arrest warrant out for them can be arrested at a state courthouse. The only civil arrest warrant to which this applies, quite frankly, is those issued by ICE. So it is a question of whether those who have a immigration warrant for them due to their status in this country can be are arrested at the courthouse when they appear as a witness or a defendant or plaintiff, any other thing. It turns out that there's a long dormant common law privilege. I say long dormant because it has not been observed by federal and state courts with much consistency over the past 50 years, maybe longer. What this bill does is kind of recognize that privilege as a state court matter. The reality is that these warrants are federal warrants. There are 2 federal district court cases that undoubtedly, one has already been appealed and the second will undoubtedly be appealed, calling into question the whole issue. Now, on the one hand, the trial courts, the district courts said, well, you can't do that, there's a common law privilege. The government, the federal government has appealed and said, we're the federal government, and the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution says we have a right to do that. All of that to say that I believe that this bill is premature. I believe it cannot tell the federal government that it can't do this. This issue has to work its way through the federal courts. So I ask you to join me in voting no.
Sir Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank the good senator from Colorado Springs, our simple country lawyer, for raising that. Those concerns. I do also want to reference a letter that was passed out to members of our Senate Judiciary Committee from several different organizations, including the Colorado Bar Association, the Colorado Lawyers Committee, different domestic violence survivor organizations, district attorneys, and public and private defense attorneys, all raising this question around the need to protect our access to our courthouses, because when victims, when witnesses, when defendants are unable to access the courthouses, how do we actually ensure access to justice? That is the rationale and the basis behind Senate Bill 83, and for that reason, I do ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 83.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 083 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Marble, Sonnenberg, Heisey, Quorum, Scott, Smallwood, Crowder, Woodward, Gardner, Lundeen, Tate, Cook. With a vote of 19 ayes, 13 no votes, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Senate Bill 083 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Moreno, Mr. Majority Leader, Rodriguez, Winter, Lee, Fields, Foote, Hanson, Bridges, Donovan, Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to Senate Bill 026.
Senate Bill 26 by Senators Fields and Cook and Representative Singer, concerning eligibility for workers' compensation benefits for workers who are exposed to psychologically traumatic events in connection with establishing mental workers' visual or audible exposure to the serious bodily injury or death or the immediate aftermath of serious bodily injury or death on one or more people as a result of a violent event, the intentional act of another person, or an accident, is a psychologically traumatic event for the purpose of determining workers' eligibility for workers' compensation benefits.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Bill 26 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Bill 026 on third reading and final passage. Are there any no votes? Senator Smallwood. Mr. Minority Leader. With a vote of 30 ayes, 2 no votes, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Senate Bill 026 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Winter, Moreno, Danielson, Williams, Zenzinger, Tate, Bridges, Lee, Janal, Todd, Hanson, Story. Please add the president. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the general order second reading of bills, which includes just Senate Bill 93, lay over until tomorrow, Wednesday, February 5th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 093 will be laid over until 2/5/2020. Consideration of resolutions, consent calendar. Will the clerk please read the title of the resolution on the consent calendar?
Senate Joint Resolution 3 by Senator Donovan, Representative Roberts, concerning approval of water project revolving fund eligibility list administered by the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar, which is Senate Joint Resolution 3.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 003. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 32 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 003 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Moreno, Crowder, Gonzalez, Bridges, Rodriguez, Winter, Hanson, Lee. Please add the president. Consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 006?
Senate Joint Resolution 06 by Senator Sonnenberg Fields, concerning the designation of February 4th as missing person in Colorado.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, the reason why I'm going to lay this over is because it is a redundant resolution to the one we already adopted. It was introduced as a Senate joint resolution when it should have been introduced as just a Senate resolution, so that's why this is happening. Mr. President, I move Senate Joint Resolution 006 lay over until May 7th, 2020.
Is there any discussion? The motion is for Senate Joint Resolution 006 to lay over until May 7, 2020. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted, and Senate Joint Resolution 006 will lay over until May 7, 2020. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all of the appointments listed on the consent calendar?
Members of the Board of Trustees for Colorado Mesa University for a term expiring December 31st, 2020. Allison Ream Griffin of Lafayette, Colorado, Republican, occasioned by the death of Tillman Bishop of Grand Junction, Colorado, appointed effective December 31st, 2019 for terms expiring December 31st, 2023. Kelly Jean Burrow of Denver, Colorado, Democrat, reappointed. Alejandro Sanchez Sr. of Basalt, Colorado, Democrat, appointed. Ronald V. Davis of Edwards, Colorado, unaffiliated, appointed. Members of the Groundwater Commission for terms expiring May 1st, 2023. Glenn S. Friel of Wiggins, Colorado, serves as a resident agriculturist from the North Kiwi Bijou Basin, occasioned by the removal of Daniel L. Farmer of Colorado Springs, Colorado, reappointed. Members of the State Board of Land Commissioners, effective June 30th, 2019, for terms expiring June 30th, 2023. Christine Marie Scanlon of Keystone, Colorado, serves as representative of local government and land use planning as a Democrat appointed. Josephine W. Heath of Boulder, Colorado, serves as representative of public primary secondary education as a Democrat appointed. Members of the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority, for terms expiring October 1st, 2023. Michael Faber of Crested Butte, Colorado, serves as a member of the Gunnison and Compadre Drainage Basin with experience in water planning and development appointed. George Patrick Corkle of Walden, Colorado, serves as a member of the North Platte Drainage Basin reappointed. Stephen Eric Vandevar of Alamosa, Colorado, serves as a member from the Rio Grande Drainage Basin reappointed.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of all the appointments on the consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar, which includes members of the Board of Trustees for Colorado Mesa University, members of the Groundwater Commission, members of the State Board of Land Commissioners, and members of the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is for the confirmation of all the governor's appointments listed on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 32 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 3 excused, all the appointments on the consent calendar are confirmed. Governor's appointments. Consideration of governor appointments. Will the clerk please read the appointments to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission?
Members of the Parks and Wildlife Commission, effective July 1st, 2019, for terms expiring July 1st, 2023. Taisha Rashawn Adams of Boulder, Colorado, serves as a representative of Outdoor Recreation Utilization and Parks Resources reappointed. Elizabeth Ann Bleck of Ray, Colorado, serves as a representative of Sports Persons and Outfitters appointed. Carrie Bessonette Hauser of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, serves as a representative of Outdoor Recreation Utilization and Parks Resources reappointed. For terms expiring July 1st, 2022. Eden Vardy of Aspen, Colorado, serves as a representative of Agriculture appointed. Charles Frederick Garcia of Denver, Colorado, serves as a representative of Sports Persons appointed. Luke B. Schaefer of Craig, Colorado, serves as a member at large appointed.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of Ms. Tisha Adams, Elizabeth Blacka, Carrie Hauser, Eden Vardy, Charles Garcia, and Luke Schaefer as members of the Parks and Wildlife Commission.
Is there any discussion? Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, have you ever gone to a restaurant and sat down and your good friend across from you looks at you and said, "There's spinach on your teeth"? I think it's happened to us. Embarrassing that it's happened. It's probably more embarrassing that you got caught eating spinach in my mind, but it happens. There's also occasion where you go to a restaurant with a friend and you have spinach on your teeth and he doesn't say anything. And you go through that whole hour, hour and a half situation, you walk out, you get in your car and you look at the mirror and you have spinach on your teeth. Members, that's kind of what we're dealing with here today. I am in opposition to a couple of these nominations. Now let's go back in history. Let's go back to last spring when these nominations came forward. And I made it known that I was in opposition to one of the people nominated, not because I didn't like the person. The fact is, I do not feel that he met the qualifications of the nomination. And so those after the day after session of those members were reappointed. Now, I think we need to really take a look at what our responsibility is. In statute, we are obligated to provide oversight for appointees. Now, if we're not going to do that and take a full look at what we're doing here and just rubber stamp everything, let's just run legislation that says the governor can appoint anybody he wants. And I would be fine with that if that were in statute. But members, that is not how statute reads. It is our obligation to provide oversight. I talked the other day about appointees to another commission. that I felt that was heavily weighted to the Front Range. It would not be honest for me to step forward and not say anything on these nominations because they are heavily weighted to the Western Slope. There are 13 members in the Wildlife Commission. 2 are non-voting members. But let me explain where the board is now if these nominations are approved as presented. You have 1 from Breckenridge, you have 1 from Sedalia, 1 from Trinidad, 1 from Ray, Glenwood, Denver, Aspen, Craig, Meeker, Red Vale, Boulder, non-voting members, Summit County, which is all Western Slope, and the Commissioner of Agriculture, which is Durango. So you have about 9 members on this panel that are from west of the Continental Divide. 9 out of 13. You have 3 members that are Front Range. Sedalia, Denver, and Boulder. You have 1 east of I-25. 30% of our landmass of Colorado is east of I-25. They have 1 person representing them. And that person nominated by the governor is new to I-25. A great person. She's done a great job. But frankly, she comes from Jackson County, was a county commissioner in Jackson County. Now, I would venture to guess that there are very qualified people who have used that mailing address east of I-25 for a number of years. So in all due respect to the governor, I would ask that someone representing that region be appointed to this. The other concern that I have is Mr. Evan Vardy from Aspen. And I met Mr. Vardy. I met this commission last year when they came to Telluride. And you know what? I liked each and every one of them. But the fact is, statute calls for 3 members of agriculture. Now, I guess you can split hairs in here and say that someone who likes agriculture is agriculture. If we're going to split hairs less far, let's say that everybody that goes to a grocery store likes agriculture. Therefore, they are qualified. I will be a no on Mr. Vardy and Ms. Blanchett simply because I do not feel that they meet the qualifications that we are asking for, the representation that we're asking for. I could go on even so far as to question the actions of last year, because there is a Supreme Court case, and it did not involve this, but it involved the Highway Transportation Commission. And appointees were made during the session and never acted on by the Senate. It was taken to court. And the court ruling says that those that were nominated would have to wait for confirmation that those positions would be filled by those positions that were confirmed by the Senate until the new members are confirmed. So, I'm going to tell you, members, I believe we are friends. I believe I am a friend of the governor. But members, we have spinach on our teeth. And unless we acknowledge that we as a body are an equal branch of government in Colorado. It is our obligation to hold our obligation to do what the statute requires. Members, 2 of these members, in my estimation, do not meet the qualifications of statute, even though, in my estimation, they are wonderful people. I would hope that as a later date, when a position comes forward that they meet the statute on, that they would be renominated. But today I will be a no vote on Mr. Vardy and Ms. Bleachout. Thank you.
Senator Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I represent Senate District 29, and 1/3 of my district is rural, and I do have some ranchers and some farmers and some producers. And oftentimes, they don't call me. But I have gotten some calls recently on the makeup of the members of this Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. I wasn't in committee, so I'm not aware of what was shared in reference to their credentials. But what I've been told is exactly what the senator mentioned in reference to the balance and the structure. So I don't know if anyone can respond who was in the committee, who can kind of respond to some of the concerns I heard about some folks who have been nominated and appointed. I guess there's some feelings out there that because they're not producers and ranchers, that they may not be the right member to represent this Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. So I'm just trying to obtain some additional information so I can respond back to the farmers and the ranchers and the producers that are in my district. Is there anyone that can respond to that question?
Senator Sonnenberg.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and to the good senator from Aurora, I am happy to help respond to those issues. As we look at recreational activities and sportsman activities throughout the state, the Eastern Plains make up about 1/3, a little over 1/3, and have some of the best recreation areas, such as the President's Pueblo Reservoir, Jackson Reservoir in Morgan County, North Sterling Reservoir. We also have other hunting and fishing opportunities on the Eastern Plains. There are probably, and I never did get the numbers back on this, there are probably more combination and small game hunting licenses utilized on the Eastern Plains than all other activities, large game items in the entire rest of Colorado. The good senator from Montrose talked about the makeup of the commission. And yes, they are loaded on the West Slope, which you ought to be pleased about, but understand that when we put Parks and Wildlife together several years ago, we put a commission together that would bring a balanced view and balanced perspective. We had 3 from Ag, 3 from knowledge of wildlife issues that are sports people, 3 that are regularly engaged in outdoor recreation, such as the parks. And then, of course, the 2 that you hear about that are non-voting, the executive director of DNR and the commissioner of agriculture. So if you take a look at just the voting members, you have 1 in Denver, a sportsman. You have 1 in Boulder, outdoor rec. You have one in Trinidad down south that represents agriculture. There is one on your list today from Ray. The good senator from Montrose talked about that representative in Ray just moving to Ray because her husband farms down there. But her husband isn't the one that's appointed. She's the one that's appointed. Former county commissioner in Jackson County that just moved to Ray to fill that slot as a sportsman. Everybody else is on the West Slope. Well, let's talk about where they are on the West Slope. Along the I-70 corridor and northwest at Craig and Meeker, wonderful. One down close to Telluride down there, that's Robert Bray, who does sportsman and agriculture. But if you get to the southwest entire fourth of the state of Colorado, they have one representative. That's Robert Bray. The San Luis Valley, 0 representation. Gunnison, Buena Vista, Salida, all of those folks, 0 representation. And rest assured, there are huge amounts of sportsman activities, parks and wildlife activities in that area. You get away from Trinidad, Eastern Plains, nothing. Fort Collins, nothing. Loveland, nothing. Longmont, nothing. Greeley, nothing. I can go east, Sterling, Brush, Lyman, nothing. Fort Morgan, nothing. Lahana, Los Animas, Lamar, nothing. Colorado Springs, nothing. Members, you've heard me talk about this before. It's important that we have a good, diverse board. That's all we're asking for. That's all we're asking the governor to do is make appointments that are diverse, that cover the entire state. When we put this together, we wanted people, and it specifically says knowledge, reasonable knowledge of wildlife issues, regularly engaged in outdoor recreation, actively involved in production agriculture. The senator from Montrose hit the nail on the head when he said, we don't fit all of those qualifications. Members, there's a reason that we have Senate confirmations. We are that separate branch of government that holds the governor accountable. Party shouldn't matter. We should follow the Constitution. We should follow the law. We should hold the governor's appointments accountable and make sure that they follow the law. That's why I'm going to ask you a no. Now, we could have broke this out into individual, but the motion is for all 6. I will be a no on all 6, as it states right now, because that is what the motion is. But understand, and quite frankly, I think the 6, even though 2 clearly don't fit the qualifications, when it comes to the diversity, it's probably good that we vote against all 6 as well. I'm going to ask you for a no vote so we actually follow the law. Thank you.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think a lot of the sentiment and comments that are said at the mic today about the members of the Park and Wildlife Commission are accurate and are addressing valid concerns with the board as it currently stands with these appointments if you just look at it in isolation. But I will add to the conversation that we have 2 appointments coming up, And I think that with those appointments, hopefully a message is sent loud and clear today of the gaps that those two appointments need to address and fill. So I will ask for an aye vote today on these confirmations of the members of Parks and Wildlife, but we'll also make a commitment to make sure that as we consider future appointments to Parks and Wildlife Commission, that we address some of the real concerns and issues that were raised on the floor today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask for a clarification that I believe we are voting on these individually. Is that the case?
Senator Quorum, that is correct. I was going to make that announcement after we had discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, because I do wholeheartedly support 4 of the people nominated for this position. They have been serving. They have done yeoman job, and I thank them. I think the 2 that I'm not supporting, it is not their fault that this was handled as it is. And I would encourage that they be considered on new appointments. But members, it's not always easy to do the right thing. But it is always right. And the right thing to do here today is to accept our responsibility as elected members of the Senate and hold other branches of government accountable rather than simply rubber stamp. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, members, we will proceed by taking them in order as they appear on your calendar. So if you wish to be recorded no vote on any of the members for consideration of the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, if you will make your way to the well, similar to how we do for consent calendar, and register your no vote with the name, please. No votes. No votes for Tisha Adams.
I'd like to be
Senator Crowder.
considered a no vote.
Sir Crowder will be recorded as a no vote on Tisha Adams. This is just for Tisha Adams. No votes.
Sir, I'd like to be considered a no vote on all of them.
One at a time.
All right, I just thought I'd. With 31 ayes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Tisha Adams is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. No votes on Elizabeth Blecha. Senator Crowder. I would like to be considered a no vote.
Senator Crowder will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Quorum will be recorded as a no vote. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asked to be recorded as a no vote.
Minority Leader will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Scott will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Lundeen.
Lundeen, no.
Senator Lundeen will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as no.
Senator Gardner will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Woodward will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Heisey will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Cook will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Marble will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Sonnenberg will be recorded as a no vote.
With 21 ayes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Elizabeth Butchba is confirmed to is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. No votes for Kerry Hauser. Senator Crowder.
I would like to be considered a no vote.
Senator Crowder will be recorded as a no vote. With 31 ayes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Kerry Hauser is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. Eden Vardy, no votes. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Sonnenberg will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Crowder.
No vote, sir.
Senator Crowder will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Lundeen.
Thank you, Mr. President. No vote.
Senator Lundeen will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Scott will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Marble.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also would like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Marble will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Gardner will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Heisey will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. No.
Senator Woodward will be recorded as a no vote. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Cook will be recorded as a no vote. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Asked to be recorded as a no vote.
Mr. Minority Leader will be recorded as a no vote. With 22 ayes, 10 no votes, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Eden Vardy is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Committee. Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote.
Senator Quorum will be recorded as a no vote on Eden Vardy. With 21 ayes, 11 no votes, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Eden Vardy is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. No votes on Charles Garcia. Senator Crowder.
I'd like to be recorded as a no vote, sir.
Senator Crowder will be recorded as a no vote. With 31 ayes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Charles Garcia is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. Luke Schaefer, no votes. Senator Crowder.
Also, I'd like to be considered a no vote, sir.
Senator Crowder will be recorded as a no vote. With 31 ayes, 1 no vote, 0 absent, and 3 excused, Luke Schaefer is appointed to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 2 announcements to make. First of all, I wanted to let folks know that our Finance Committee will be taking place at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We will be switching the order of our bills. We'll first be hearing Senate Bill 99, followed by Senate Bill 40, then Senate Bill 3, then Senate Bill 67, and lastly, Senate Bill 112. Second of all, members, you may have received a red water bottle on your desks this morning, and that is thanks to the good folks over at Metropolitan State University of Denver. MSU Denver's Day at the Capitol and their legislative reception unfortunately were canceled today due to the weather, but they did leave us something fun. Inside your water bottles, you will find a little piece of paper that includes details on the number of your constituents who are MSU Denver students, alums, and employees. I just want y'all to know that 96% of the nearly 20,000 MSU students from Denver of the 20,000 MSU Denver students are from Colorado, and 76% are Pell eligible first-generation students or students of color. MSU Denver also educates 1,200 veterans. This university is serving a diverse student body and delivering the ready workforce that our Colorado businesses need. With that, I want to thank you all, everyone involved, and students and educators at MSU Denver for everything that you do to help Colorado succeed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I have 2 announcements. And as we all sat here and aged, I'm inviting you down to a breakfast tomorrow to learn more about aging at the Aging Caucus, and it will be from 7:30 to 8:45. Actually, it's not downstairs. It's in the Senate Committee Room 352. Breakfast will be provided, so come on down tomorrow. And a little bit more about aging and the Aging Caucus. Also, my second announcement is the local government committee will meet today. We'll be hearing 3 bills. Senate Bill 18, Senate Bill 106, and Senate Bill 10, and we will have a brief presentation by the counties and commissioners acting together. That's at 2 p.m. in room 354. See you there.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. In response to the aging announcement, I do remember the days of wine, women, and song. Now it's Metro-Cal, the same old gal, and sing along with Mitch. So, with that said, the Colorado Retail Council will be meeting tomorrow at the University Club at 5:15, 7:30. Adult beverages and hors d'oeuvres, and please RSVP to Chris Howes at chrishowes.com. Thank you.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and colleagues. A quick announcement for you about International Education Day. Tomorrow morning, they will be hosting breakfast in the North Foyer. I encourage you to stop by and say hello. It includes all of the institutions of higher education in the state of Colorado, celebrating the international students that are here in Colorado. It turns out it is our 5th largest export. Think about that for a second. Almost $500 million is brought into the state of Colorado because of our fine higher educational institutions educating international students from all over the world. And having been an international student myself, I know how valuable this is, and it's also a huge part of our Colorado economy. So come and celebrate tomorrow morning.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the Judiciary Committee, don't forget we have an 8 o'clock meeting tomorrow, I think 271 on the DA compensation issue. Thanks.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation and Energy will be meeting at 2 p.m. today. I look forward to seeing you there.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify my testimony from Senate Bill 83. The Colorado Bar Association testified in support of Senate Bill 83, but did not sign the letter that I referenced to during third readings. I wanted to clarify that record. Thank you.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to announce that I was declared the winner of the Iowa Democratic caucuses last evening, but graciously declined because I'm not a member of that party.
Is your name Bernie?
Yeah, the Republicans had a caucus.
Committee reports.
February 3rd, 2020, the Community State Veterans and Military Affairs in consideration had a hearing on the following appointments. Some recommended appointments placed in consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the Fire and Police Pension Association Board of Directors for terms expiring September 1st, 2023. Tammy Ann Hitchens of Westminster, Colorado, serves as a representative of Colorado municipal employees were appointed. Michael Francis Filo of Lake, Colorado, serves as a representative of special districts appointed. Jason Walter Mantis of Timnath, Colorado, serves as a full-time paid firefighter appointed for terms expiring September 1st, 2025. Patrick K. Fallon of Denver, Colorado, serves as retired police officer appointed. February 3rd, 2020, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs Execution Committee conducts following. Senate Bill 133 be postponed indefinitely. February 3rd, 2020, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs Execution Committee conducts following. Senate Bill 77 be postponed indefinitely. February 3rd, 2020, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs Execution Committee conducts following. Senate Bill 72 be postponed indefinitely.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we have some bills to read across. You do not need to be here. For now, I move the Senate recess until 2 p.m. today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in a recess until 1400 hours today.